The Trump administration is readying itself to mount a powerful defense in the Senate. So what is the best argument for Trump against this impeachment sham? Our next guest spent the weekend golfing with President Trump and joins us exclusively. Trey Gowdy is a former South Carolina congressman, a Fox News contributor, a former federal prosecutor, and somebody I was able to serve with in the previous Congress. Congressman, thanks for being here. Now, I got a picture of you golfing with the president. Now, check out this form. That is quite the swing, great backswing. And in the background, you can actually see the president looking off into the trees and bushes to figure out where that ball actually went, Trey.
Well, it's a 50% chance of going left and a 50% chance of going right. The only place you need not look is right down the middle of the fairway when I'm hitting a driver.
You're a pretty good golfer. Getting serious here. Are you going to represent President Trump coming into 2020?
No, the president's got great lawyers, JC, and more importantly than having great lawyers, he's got great facts. I think for several months we've been talking about the process and how fundamentally flawed it's been. I mean, imagine being investigated by somebody like Adam Schiff. That's the process. But, Jason, I focus on the substance. The single best piece of evidence for the president is the transcript itself. You know, because you're familiar with the transcript, this was the second phone call that President Trump and President Zelensky had. If President Trump were really obsessed with conditioning aid on investigations, he would have brought that up in the first phone call, right? I mean, if you're really obsessed with it, you're going to bring it up every chance you get. Go pull the transcript from the first phone call. Not a single word. Look at the remainder of that transcript. What did the president say? He said, I want you to do us a favor. And then for those wondering who us is, he answered it. He said, I want you, our country has been through a lot. So the us is linked to our country. Who brought up Rudy Giuliani's name? Was it Donald Trump or was it President Zelensky? It was President Zelensky. That's who introduced Rudy Giuliani into the conversation. The only thing President Trump did is he inserted Bill Barr. And if it's an impeachable offense to ask the Attorney General, the top law enforcement official for the country, to look into potential impropriety, if that's an impeachable offense, then we're not going to have presidents serving very long.
I've got a question about Joe Biden and the compliance with the subpoena. I mean, to hear Joe Biden say it, depending on which hour you ask him, he's pretty much covered every number on the bingo card. I can't exactly tell what his latest thinking is, but would a Joe Biden have to comply with a subpoena if it was proffered?
Yeah, if you don't like Joe Biden's answer, just wait about an hour, and he'll give you the exact opposite. I found it dumbfounding. He single-handedly gutted one of the two articles of impeachment when he said, by the way, y'all are trying to remove a president from office for doing what I just promised to do. While these Democrats are supporting Biden, that's the exact same conduct. He's not going to comply with the subpoena, which is what one of the two articles of impeachment against Trump is. Does he have to comply? He can go to court. He can move to quash it, and he can come and invoke some privilege if he has one that he's entitled to. But that's exactly President Trump's position. If you want Mick and Bolton to testify, then take them to court and have the third branch order them to appear. But Schiff and the House Democrats didn't want to do that.
No, it is rich to actually hear Senator Schumer make the claim that they need a fair trial, they need all the documents, they need witnesses, when in the House they didn't even give him a chance to have a minority witness day.
It's rich for any Democrat. But you have Democrats who have already said the evidence is overwhelming, despite the fact that not a single piece of evidence has been introduced in front of them. They said the facts are undisputed, despite the fact that the trial has not begun yet. You have, what, a half dozen members of the jury that are running for the job of the person they are supposed to be sitting in dispassionate judgment of. You would never have that in any real, fair judicial proceeding. So the notion that this is somehow like a courtroom where you have 12 people who have not made up their minds, I mean, Jason, out of 100, good luck finding 12 out of 100 who have not made up their minds. I can think of maybe six that a full-blown trial with witnesses and exhibits might move one way or the other. But the other 94, they're going to vote the same way, whether the trial's today or whether it's a year from now.
So let's go to Pelosi and this delay. I mean, if you actually go back and read the articles that were passed in the House, the Democrats wrote them, they passed them all by themselves, and it also says that those articles will be exhibited to the United States Senate. But Nancy Pelosi, as the Speaker, has not transferred them over. A, does it matter if she transfers them over? And then B, why would you delay it the way she is?
I don't know, JC. I mean, if he's an existential threat to the Republic, I mean, if we really are faced with this once in a 200-year abuse of power, why in the world you would be sitting on the indictment and not sending it over for it to be tried? If she were Republican Speaker of the House, I promise you she'd be asked a lot more about it, but I haven't heard her ask much in the last week. I've always thought this is about the Senate. It's not about keeping the House, because I think they're going to do that. This is about putting a handful of Republican senators in tight spots in November. Cory Gardner and Tom Tillis and Susan Collins and Martha McSally, put them in tight spots, make them cast difficult votes, because even when Trump is reelected, and I think he will be in the fall of 2020, if he doesn't have the Senate, he's going to be essentially neutered as a president in terms of getting his cabinet. So that's always what I thought this was about, and her actions tend to confirm that.
And if she does eventually transfer them over, that could happen tomorrow, it could happen, I don't know, never. But if she were to actually do that, is it legitimate to call up, say, a Hunter Biden or the whistleblower? Or do you have to deal with those in a very different way in a Senate trial?
Yeah, I mean, Jason, what I would tell the Republicans is don't call any witnesses. I mean, it's the House Democrats' job to have built the case. And they could have gone to court, and they could have compelled Mick to testify, and Bolton. They could have honored Devin and John Ratcliffe and Doug Collins' request that Hunter Biden testify. They didn't do any of that. So the investigation is over. This is the trial. Present it on the paper, present it on the depositions, make your opening and closing statements, and then vote. I mean, if the trial were today, the president would win, and I don't think he'd lose a single Republican senator, and he might pick up one Democrat. So if you have the jury and you know how they're going to rule, go ahead and get it over with, and then the president can say whatever he wants to after the trial is over. I don't believe in calling witnesses when I don't know what they're going to say. I mean, this is not a drama. This is not something where we need a really spellbinding, exciting ending. I like no drama when it comes to trials. And he's going to win if the vote's today. So let's go ahead and get the vote over with.
All right, I got to ask you real quickly in our parting question here about Peter Strzok. He came out, made another comment today about his First Amendment rights to tweet or say or text whatever he wants to say as a federal employee. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, if he were really confident in his First Amendment rights, I don't know why he would have offered to take a demotion, offered to take a cut in pay if he held on to his job. I mean, Jason, you and I have a lot of respect for law enforcement. I really can't think of anyone who's done more damage to the FBI's brand in the last 18 months than Peter Strzok. So I'll just tell your viewers, for every one Peter Strzok, there are 100 fantastic FBI agents. You just don't know their names. Don't judge that entity, that agency, by the Peter Strzok's of the world. He's a one-off. I'm glad he's out. He never should have been investigating President Trump. I'm glad he's out of the FBI, and I hope he loses the hell out of his lawsuit.
Oh, thanks. Congressman Gowdy, I really do appreciate it. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you and Julie. See you.
Thank you.